Hey y'all, welcome back. I'm Mama Dr. Jones, a board-certified OBGYN and mom to four, and today we're going through a video called Why We Need a Male Birth Control Pill from one of my favorite creators on this platform, Johnny Harris. He makes very educational and evidence-based content on all kinds of topics, and I'm just excited that this one is a little bit in my wheelhouse. He does note in the description of this video that it got age restricted, which significantly affected its views. I feel your pain, Johnny. If you're watching this video, when you finish, just go over to his video, give him a view, because it looks like he put a ton of work into this video.
Raises questions about the future of Roe versus Wade and what this means for abortion rights in our country.
So this is happening in the US right now, and lately I've been wondering, why the is there not a birth control pill for men? I mean, it's 2022. We can make vaccines in like 10 seconds. We send telescopes into space, and we can take photos of things millions of light years away. But yet, we still have not figured out how to make it so that I can take a pill and not have a baby when I have sex. I mean, we're kind of trying. Look at this Instagram ad that I got served. It's like a ball sack ultrasound sperm killer pouch device. There's actually an appetite for this. People want it.
Never heard of that? We'll do some research for you and get back to you on that one.
So let's talk about birth control. First, let's start with a list of the options you have if you want to have sex and not have a baby. There's like 10 options for women and 2 for men. 2 condoms and vasectomies. Oh, and I guess pulling out? Question mark? Oh, and of these 2, one is notoriously unreliable and the other one is like permanent.
Notoriously unreliable, he's talking about pulling out. That's about 80% effective in the way that most people do it and never going to be anywhere close to 100% effective. Vasectomy is over 99% effective, but as he said, it's permanent, so you can't just get it when you're young. And when I say this, people always say,
no, it's not permanent, it can be reversed.
I know that there are people who reverse vasectomies. It doesn't always work, and it should be used when you are intending to permanently prevent pregnancy.
It's not the 1950s anymore. Why is the burden of birth control still predominantly on the partner who carries the pregnancies? We got to the bottom of this through a lot of reporting, and I want to show you what the deal is, because in this story you will see the dark side of medicine and why some things get studied and why others don't. But you'll also see a bit of hope in the future. Like, this is slowly changing. Not fast enough though. Oh, and I'm going to dive into sex ed because the details are kind of fuzzy for me. It's been a while.
The uterus becomes richly supplied with blood to nurture. One sperm succeeds in breaking through.
Okay, hold on.
He has so many great props. I don't even have that many wonderful posters and props and things. Just my little uterus over there. Okay, I have several. A uterus, a sperm, a fetal skull, a regular skull, some STIs, but I don't have all of those things that I like a lot.
Welcome to sex ed class. If you're like me, you kind of don't remember the details. Let's talk about hormones. Hormones are chemicals, but there's so much more than that. So let's think of it as an analogy here. This is your body, and all of the veins and arteries are the internet. This is how stuff gets around. Hormones are like emails that are sent from the managers of the body, all of these glands. The managers are telling different parts of the body what to do, to change something, to kick off some certain process or behavior, all in the name of keeping the body balanced and regulated and healthy. Now, let's talk about how babies are made. Every month, a woman's body managers send out some really important emails. Remember, emails are hormones. We're just gonna stick with the analogy, okay? The hormones tell this big bag of eggs to release one of the eggs down this tube.
Big bag of
so that
eggs.
it can end up here in the uterus. The uterus, which has already received its own set of emails saying that the egg is on its way and please prepare the place so that it's cozy by putting this nutrient-rich lining, like a nice cozy blanket, so that the egg has the best chance of thriving. So the egg finally arrives and hopes that a male sperm will join it so that a baby can start growing for the next 9 months. But if the sperm doesn't arrive on the scene within like this really narrow time period, it's like a day.
Okay, I'm sure that Johnny Harris knows this, but the way that this is edited makes it seem like an egg is moving down the fallopian tube implanting and hoping it gets fertilized, and that's definitely not how it works. So sperm can live in the reproductive tract for up to 5 days. So they spend that time swimming around in the uterus, getting out into the fallopian tubes. Some of them die, some of them don't even make it past the cervix, and they go into the toilet. So all of the sperm that do make it can live for up to 5 days. Once you ovulate, your egg only lives for 24 hours, and it needs to be fertilized prior to 24 hours-ish, or it will die. Most fertilizations happen in the middle of the fallopian tube, in the center part of the fallopian tube. After the fertilization has occurred, it travels down into the uterus, and usually by about day 5, it's going to be implanted, day 5 after ovulation. That's actually how that works, and I'm sure that he knows that, but the way it's edited was maybe a little bit confusing.
Then the hormone managers send another set of emails saying, too bad, so sad, he didn't show up, we're not reproducing this month. Let's clear all this lining out that we created for the egg and start preparing for next month. They clear it all out, they flush out all this blood lining while the woman is on her period, and the cycle starts over. Do you see how this entire thing plays out?
I really love the graphics that he's using, and I love the analogies too. Excellent job on this video, Johnny.
Because of very specific instructions that are written and sent by hormones. They cue each step of this process. Okay, but most of the time you just kind of want to have sex and not have the egg and the sperm meet up, right? Even though the body really wants that, you don't necessarily want to have a baby. And this is why we invented birth control.
The most effective of these is the pill.
Don't forget to take your pill. I won't.
Pause really quick. I just need to tell you something, which is one of the questions I get most often is, how do you know so much about all of these random topics like male birth control?
Audible, that's what he's going to tell you is the answer. And I love Audible too, so check out Audible with Johnny's link, audible.com/Johnny Harris.
Most modern methods of birth control work by messing around with the emails being sent around the body. Cue the pill. So a woman takes this little pill every day. Where's the pill? I have a pill. This is the pill. Actually, it's 28 pills because a woman takes this every single day and it changes everything.
It's actually 21 pills in that pack and 7 placebo pills.
Pill contains a new batch of emails, or hormones, that override the old instructions and tell the whole system to do something totally different. Announcement, for the next 28 days, we're under new management. So the new emails are coming down to the ovaries, where all the eggs are, and they're like, hey, guys, don't do anything this month. You're fine. Just relax, take a nap. And the ovaries are like, but does that mean we won't get anything done? We're gonna be super unproductive. We're like the most important thing for keeping the species alive. And the pills are just like, shh, take a nap, go to sleep. Okay, here comes another email. This time it's going to the cervix, telling it to start making really thick, sticky mucus. And the cervix is like, but wait, we make mucus that isn't thick, and we actually try to make it so it's perfect so that the sperm can swim upstream and get to the egg. And the pills are just like, shh, just do what you're told. Oh, and uterus. Change the lining that you're creating so that it's not very cozy for an egg to survive in case, one gets through. And the uterus does. And this is how the pill works.
That was a really great explanation, unlike the analogies used in the recent HIV 90s sex ed video that I went through. Those are actually helpful analogies, and I love the graphic.
If you want to have sex and not have a baby, take this pill every day. And there's the downside. You have to take this pill every day, and that comes at a cost. It turns out that changing the hormones that make it so that this doesn't happen also has some side effects. Because hormones are not isolated to one system. They don't just affect this. You mess with hormones, you mess with all the systems. It's an interconnected thing that changing the level of one can affect many others. A study from Denmark found that women who take the pill that has hormones in it are more likely to suffer depression compared to women who don't. Really quick, before you demonize the pill is amazing and it's totally safe. 150 million women take it every day. And for a lot of women, it actually helps regulate some of their hormones that are off balance. So if you have questions about birth control and hormones, don't listen to a random dude on YouTube. Go talk to a healthcare professional. Thank you.
Hey, I happen to know one of those. I actually go through all of the data he has just shared here in great detail in a video that I made about oral contraceptive pills, the side effects, what does the literature say, and also some of the fear mongering that goes on the internet about those. Some people have terrible side effects on birth control pills, and some people really like their birth control pills. This is a very individual thing. We are all individual people, and if you want the real data and percentages and things like that, go watch the other video. I will link it down below as well.
Would men be willing to pay that price to get a pill of their own? So let's talk about where this magic pill came from. Well before playing around with hormones, humans were still trying to have consequence-free sex. And they basically had one tool available to them, which was some form of condom. Sometimes it was linen, sometimes it was animal intestines, or in Japan they used tortoise shells. Wait, what? Tortoise shells? Oh, tortoise shells. Wow, that's a great fitting tortoise shell. What kind of tortoise is this? Anyway, this is what they used.
I feel like I need a whole video on the history of birth control prior to the introduction of the birth control pill. That was fascinating. And if you haven't watched my historical pregnancy test video, it's, again, one of my favorite videos I've ever made. It didn't get a lot of views because apparently it's not y'all's favorite video, but I love that video. If you haven't seen it, you should watch it.
The material latex was invented, condoms became very cheap and widely available. But you have to understand that for a long time, they weren't trying to not have kids, they were trying to stop diseases from spreading.
But you don't get them if you use a condom.
Because, you know, children are a blessing from above. Why would you want to not have them?
Let me see what you have.
No!
But then, women in the modern age, heaven forbid, wanted to have fewer children. But they still wanted to have sex. And unfortunately, a top way of doing that was through dangerous and deadly back alley abortions. So in 1916, this nurse from New York opened a clinic, and the theme of her clinic was birth control, teaching women how not to get pregnant. By the way, this was like super illegal at the time, because under this law, you couldn't publish anything having to do with sex. So she's totally breaking the law, teaching women about sex. Jeez, scandalous.
Sometimes I feel like I'm breaking the law trying to teach people about sex on YouTube because I get punished for it by the algorithm.
But she fought back and eventually helped create Planned Parenthood. And it was her who led the charge in creating the pill. She was a hero, a liberator, and she was totally racist. Or at least she spoke about it in a very racist parlance, referring to it as a tool to help, quote, the process of weeding out the unfit and preventing the birth of defectives. I mean, that's more than racist. That's called eugenics. So a kind of inconvenient fact in all of this story is that a major motivation for the pill wasn't sexual liberation, but rather it was the overpopulation of the earth with these unfit races and people.
I'm glad to see Margaret Sanger discussed in a accurate way here. I often only see her brought up by anti-choice people in saying that abortion itself is eugenics or was created for eugenics, and that's like half the story and not really accurate. Many scientific developments, many things in our current culture have very racist bases or were studied in very racist manners, and that carries over into today, certainly in many ways. But that doesn't necessarily mean the individual like pill or abortion is racist or eugenics. It means that it was a tool that was being used in that way. Does that make sense? Like, it doesn't demonize the medication. It demonizes the history of how it got here. I always see Margaret Sanger brought up and the full story not told, and correct information being led to incorrect conclusions.
Development of the pill went forward, and they decided to do trials on it to get it ready for market. And where did they turn but Puerto Rico, a place where all problems were blamed on overpopulation. A perfect testing grounds for this really twisted, effed up project of weeding out unfit races.
Puerto Rico, a beautiful little island with a big problem.
In 1956, contraceptive pills, 20 times as strong as the ones used today, were first tested among Puerto Rican women who lived in government housing projects.
They said in there 20 times more estrogen, but it's actually more like 100 times more, and maybe even closer to 200 to 300 times more. The type of estrogen that was used in those pills, mestranol, was a type of estrogen that itself is much more potent than the estrogens that we use today. It was also used in significantly higher doses. The first dose had 10 milligrams. For reference, today we currently use anywhere from 20 to 35 micrograms. It was magnitudes more potent. And that led to the very serious and very deadly and very bad side effects that came along with that first pill.
In Puerto Rico, they were already sterilizing women to control the population. And now they were going to test out this new experimental pill. They pitched them like, hey, come do the pill instead of getting sterilized, because they were literally forcing people to get surgery where they tie the tubes and they like make it impossible to have kids. They started giving them the pill. Oh, but they forgot to tell them that they were a part of a trial for a highly experimental drug that was going to mess with their hormones. Doctors didn't have their dosing figured out yet. So they were giving women pills that were way more hormonally aggressive than the ones we have today. So these women were experiencing intense side effects. But the doctors running the trial told the New York Times that these side effects were, quote, largely psychogenic. Most of them happening because women expect them. 22 women dropped out of the study because of the side effects, and 3 women died, but their deaths were never investigated. But in the end, the trial was deemed a success. Eventually, they dialed in the dosage, and the pill hit the market. And that's how we got the birth control pill. I wish it was a better story. Like, I wish there wasn't the whole eugenics Puerto Rico thing. I wish it was just like some badass feminist was like, we're gonna have less kids, and we invented this pill because we can, and we're liberated, but that's just not how it happened. It's a reminder that something so liberating can also be oppressive, and that's just a contradiction we're all gonna have to live with because life is complicated.
And it should make us aware of how we distribute it, how we make access to care available for people of different ethnicities and colors. Reproductive health care in the US is still racist. It still puts people at the bottom, puts barriers in place, and prevents access for a lot of people.
Why is all of the tampering with the hormones to prevent babies thing a female thing? Why didn't this history happen to men? Why don't we have a pill that sends overriding emails to our balls or something? Well, of course, there's the obvious, unquantifiable reality that the people holding the power and the money and wearing the lab coats have always been men who get to decide what to research and what to focus on. Oh, and that controlling women's bodies has somehow always been normalized and still is. Exhibit A.
The draft Supreme Court opinion showing a majority would
No lies.
overturn Roe versus Wade. Overturn the landmark Roe v. Wade case.
Oh, and of course, we live in a society where women are responsible for all things babies. After all, it grows in their uterus. So it's not that surprising to me that the scientists weren't out there recruiting Puerto Rican men to participate in some unethical study about controlling their bodies and what they can and can't do. It's laughable to think about that scenario because it just would never happen.
Absolutely, those reasons are part of it. In addition, it's much easier to figure out a scientific way to stop 1 ovulation per month than 1 million sperm per day. That's like 1,500 sperm per minute. I don't even know if that math's correct, but it's a whole freaking lot because sperm are really dumb and there needs to be a lot of them to find the one egg. The other thing is that research trials and the way that they are conducted for clinical research trials on people puts a little bit of a damper on this from an ethical standpoint. I always see this discussed as the men they couldn't tolerate the side effects. That's not the full story. 75% of the men in that study said their side effects were such that they didn't mind continuing the study, that it was fine. The way clinical trials are set up from a safety and efficacy standpoint is that whatever side effects or bad outcomes are being noted have to be weighed against the risk of the medication and what happens if you're not on it. Okay, so for people who have a uterus and ovaries, the risk of not being on your birth control pill is pregnancy and all the possible complications and problems that can come along with that, which are massive. So the risk of being on the pill has to be less than that risk, and that's pretty easy to get to. For people who have sperm, although I know that it doesn't make complete sense, and it's because trials weren't designed to be in this like cohesive relationship that affects both partners, but they are rating the risk of the medication and the side effects of the medication to the risk of not being on that medication, which for male birth control pills is nothing. So it doesn't take much to get above a safety standard in that situation. We just haven't quite figured out how to approach this because it's a pretty unique scenario. There's not many other situations in clinical trial and medicine where you have to overcome that. Structural sexism is part of it, but there's also a lot more to that story.
But it would be slightly a cop-out if I just left the explanation at structural sexism, which is absolutely a thing. It is real. But there are some other explanations for why we don't have a male birth control pill. Let me break those down for you. Major legitimate limitation is biology. It's a lot easier to stop 1 egg a month than it is to stop 180 million sperm blasting out of you every time you ejaculate. Blasting, is that slightly too aggressive? Anyway, that's a lot.
Sorry, Johnny, I stole your thunder. I should have had more faith that you were about to talk about all of the things I just said.
One of the most promising studies we found in our reporting was not a birth control pill, but a hormonal gel.
This is not a pill, it's actually a gel that's applied daily to a man's arm or shoulder.
The hormones tell your body to stop producing sperm, and it works really well in trials. The trials are being tested in dozens of places around the world, and it's definitely the furthest along of all of the things we looked at, and they're actually looking for more couples to participate in the trial. So if you want to participate, go into the description and check it out. I would participate, but in full disclosure, and probably TMI for the internet, I have 2 children, and I'm done having kids, so I'm gonna get a vasectomy.
Good for you, Johnny. Permanent, easier to do than a tubal, faster to do than a tubal, cheaper to do than a tubal. Can be done outpatient. You go home the same day. Healing is very quickly. And it's easier to check and make sure it's working than a tubal. Bravo. Way to be brave. Good job, Johnny.
There's another method that scientists are testing called Rhizig. You get a shot in the groin. I know that sounds terrible, but you're probably numb and fine. And the gel from the shot blocks the sperm from passing. The gel can last for 13 years, and that if you want to dissolve it, you just do a second injection and it dissolves. It was originally developed in India, but some American companies have licensed the technology and are developing similar projects, but it's still pretty early. And lastly, there are, of course, pills that are being tested. There are a lot of different approaches to these pills. Some of them are hormonal, like the birth control pill that was racistly developed in Puerto Rico, sending new emails to sex organs to get them to not do the thing they're used to doing.
I can't get over the graphics. They're so good.
These pills don't use hormones at all, but rather a Chinese herb that changes the shape of the sperm's head to make it a worse swimmer so that it can't reach the egg. It's so funny to me to think of, like, we got too good at like procreating and now we want to stop it, but evolution's like, dude, we've been trying so hard to make this easier. Stop changing the sperm's head to look like a hook.
I'm learning a lot in this video. I am not up to date on all the research for this, as it falls a bit outside of my actual specialty, but this is very interesting.
Another pill that cuts off the special protein found in the testes that then stops the sperm production. It's like all these clever ways of like reprogramming the body. It's been 99% effective at preventing pregnancies in mice. And the moment they stop taking it, they bounce right back to normal fertility. Very promising on mice. Clinical trials on humans are supposedly gonna start this year, like progress. But do you notice, it's 2022. We've invented all of this amazing stuff and we're still in—
What is this a image of? I don't understand what's happening at 2111. They're spraying something on a guy's back. Topical medication, but you usually don't put that in the middle of your back. I have no idea what that graphic is depicting, and it's distracting me.
Hear me out on this. This is like the most important part of this entire video, and if you are still here watching, just hear me out. Side effects for men. There was one study that was canceled because the safety board deemed the side effects too severe. Even though 75% of the participants said that they would keep going, that the side effects weren't too bad, they canceled it. And what were these side effects? Feelings of depression, mood swings, acne. Sound familiar? But if a healthy man experiences the same or similar volatile side effects, we deem it as too severe, unacceptable, not enough benefit for the cost of those side effects. All of this means that experimentation in male birth control is limited, which means that no one wants to fund it. If 2 people are engaged in consensual sex and one of them gets pregnant, then both should be equally affected. That seems like a no-brainer. That is an obvious thing to say, but we all tacitly disagree with that when we deem a woman's risk as higher, and thus we have a higher tolerance for her side effects. But that's how it is. And it won't change until we men step the up and start seeing birth control as something that we both carry together.
True, but a little bit oversimplified. So it's not really the way that society and culture view the side effects. It's just the way that clinical trials are designed in order to maintain safety profiles. We have to come up with a different model of safety that can incorporate the risk to others of you being off a medication. Clinical trials just weren't developed to have that risk woven in. So as much as we all agree that it makes sense, it's the way the model was made. So we have to advocate for coming up with a new model of trials for these types of medications.
The good and the bad, regardless of our anatomy.
You students who've been watching this film, you've heard the questions we're going to discuss. You can discuss these same questions with your teacher.
There's a few other things to add here. One of those is that male birth control or birth control that prevents sperm production would not really reduce the amount of birth control needed for people who have a uterus by significant amounts, with the exception of people who are in a committed monogamous relationship. And in that situation, great. But most people who are not in committed monogamous relationships but are sexually active would not trust a new or somewhat unknown partner that they've just met to tell the truth when they say, oh yeah, I'm on contraception, or to even be on it to begin with. So there is the benefit that for men, they could control their reproductive health and fertility and control their ability to be kind of like finagled into a pregnancy that they didn't want to support. But it also would still come on the partner with a uterus in a lot of situations because, again, the risk is so much higher for your physical and long-term health in the person who does end up being pregnant. So there's a lot of things that go into this. I am a huge advocate for this. I think we need a better model for clinical trials, and I definitely support the creation of this, but we need to have real conversations about the problem we're running into with development and how to overcome that, instead of just blaming it like I often see. Johnny did not do this, but like I often see on, oh, men just have no tolerance of side effects. Like, that's not really the full picture. So I just don't like that narrative. Anyway, I love Johnny Harris. This was a great video. Thank you so much, Johnny, for making it. I learned a lot. I hope that you learned a lot too. If you're new here and you'd like to subscribe, we would love to have you. I talk about all things periods, pregnancy, and everything in between. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. I'll see you next Monday.